Welcome back, everyone. We hope you enjoyed the first segment of this masterclass. Our inspiration for this masterclass is the book Shame-Proof Parenting, and our expert guide for this masterclass is Mercedes Samudio, who is the author of the Shame-Proof Parenting book. In this segment, we are going to look at the framework and the manual that Mercedes has put together for shame-proofing our parenting. I'm really excited for this one. Ready, Mercedes?
I am.
Okay, so we have a lot to cover, so I'm just going to dive right in. So we start this process of shame-proofing our parenting by putting together our own unique manual. This is something unique to each parent, right? So tell us a little about this manual.
Yeah, one of the things that I noticed being in the parenting world is that we are not hurting for books on parenting. As I'm sure people notice even in this summit, that there are so many different books about different ways to parent, different ages, different stages, different developmental cues that we can look into. And I think sometimes what parents do is they get overwhelmed with all that information that's out there for how do I parent and how do I raise a healthy child. And so what I think about the shame-proof parenting idea is that it really goes back to your vision for parenting, who you are as a parent, and including everything, your culture, your religion, and your spirituality. What does all of that mean to you? And then looking for the techniques and the strategies and the philosophies that are in alignment with that. Right? I've worked with parents who are not natural people or vegans, but they want to do more natural parenting. And I'm like, why would you do that to yourself? It's not your philosophy on life. Don't do cloth diapers if that's not something you were already thinking about doing when you were just single, right? You don't have to change your whole existence to raise healthy children. And in fact, I think it's more important for us to model what it means to be healthy in our own selves and our own authentic selves for our children than to try to be someone we're not just because we're raising children now.
So true. But it seems a little daunting to put together this manual all by ourselves, because it's so much easier to just go grab something and say, okay, I'm going to follow this. This is a step by step. But the way you laid out in the book, you make it less daunting. And the first step is by asking a couple of very important questions, right? So can you walk us through those questions that we can ask ourselves to lay the foundation of, like you said, figure out who you are and what your values are and what's important to you? So can you talk us through those two questions that will help us identify those?
I think one of the questions that I ask in the book is, what tools do you want your child to have when they're 18 years old, right? Because in America, in the United States, most children are adults, they're legally adults at 18. And so most families are ready to launch their child at that age. And so you ask yourself, what do I want them to have, right? Do I want them to have independence and respect for themselves and others? Do I want them to have an academic level? Do I want them to have these certain philosophies or these ideologies? Lay all that out. Right? Think about all the traits you want for your child. And then again, when you're going back to looking at different parenting strategies, what parenting strategies help you get your child there? Right? What parenting strategies will help your child be more independent or more respectful or more academically inclined? I even challenge parents to look at things that they want their child to do in terms of life skills. I want my child to be financially savvy, or I want my child to know how to do an interview. So then you probably should be looking for resources that are going to help them be financially savvy or help them learn how to approach job hunting and job interviewing, because these are all things that they're going to need when you're not around to teach them all the time. And so I know that can be really a really great guide for what parenting strategies do I want to really use for myself and my family. It's going to be based on what traits you want your child to have, right? And interestingly enough, it's pretty universal. Most parents want their child to be healthy, independent, respectful, to feel loved, to do kind things, right? Most parents would say, yeah, I want my child to have those traits by the time that they are ready to launch and leave the home.
And do their own laundry and cook for themselves. Yes, so they're not coming home every weekend.
Which is interesting.
Take care of that.
Which is interesting because I have a lot of parents who don't realize how important those life skills are too. Like I talked about the financial piece, I know when I was 18, I didn't know how to do anything financially. Like I had a bank account, but I didn't know how to have a credit card or make sure I had a budget and any of that. And we forget sometimes that in our pursuit to have healthy kids who are smart and who are respectful, that there are also life skills they need to know how to do, because they won't always have us to do the laundry and clean the house and take care of those just daily things that they're going to have to do on their own when they have their first apartment or when they have a roommate or when they're in college. And so I challenge parents to think about, how do I want them to do that? And kids can start doing some of this stuff as young as like 9 or 10 years old. Some of this they can begin just doing, and you don't always have to think about, oh, when they get 18, they'll do it. Well, at 10, they can fold up their own clothes. Right. They can do stuff like that, right? They can pick up their room at 10 years old. Like they can do these things. I would even say at like junior high or even high school level, to start them off with a little bank account where they can learn, how do I actually go to the bank and get money out or use this and things like that. And I say that because I think when we are, like you said, it's a very overwhelming, daunting task to raise a child and to know what to do with them. And I think if we have this kind of end goal, this end vision in mind, it'll allow us to go back to, okay, I'm stuck. What do I do? Oh, well, I want them to know this. Okay, let me go back to how to get them to know that. It'll kind of help sometimes, especially in that day-to-day hustle of being a parent.
So something that you said reminded me of reading something in your book. And that was, you were just mentioning that when you were 18, you didn't know enough about financial things. And those are important things to teach. And that is another important question we can ask ourselves when we are trying to figure out what we want to teach our kids, right? It's like, so what did I know when I was 18? And what didn't I know? And what did I wish I knew?
Yeah.
And that can form a nice base layer for us to build this manual on, right?
Yeah. And then too, challenging yourself to think of different ways to teach your kids this. I know I talk in the book about how sometimes we were taught certain things by tough love or just by kind of having to figure it out on our own. And so sometimes we can be resentful and jealous of our child because they don't have that same life, right? You wanted them to have a healthier life than you, but now they don't have the same skills you had because you had to fight to get those skills, and you wanted to create a home where your child did not have to fight. And so I challenge my parents to think about healthier ways to teach your child how to do things, even though in your family or in your childhood, it was harder for you to learn that because someone made it hard for you or someone gave you that tough love, right? But your kids still have to learn how to fold clothes. So instead of just throwing their clothes in the street and saying, hey, fold them up, like your parent may have done, you can actually sit with them and say, okay, for the next couple of weeks, we're going to fold clothes together. And then on the third week, you do it on your own, right? And you can do things in a healthier way than maybe how you were taught or how you had to learn those life lessons.
So we've talked about this a little already. And the idea is, instead of relying on one parenting strategy and trying to kind of hold on to it for dear life and making it our way, it's better if we pick strategies from a lot of different, experts, books, even YouTube videos, or even TV, regular TV shows. You're watching a nice family show, you find something that works, record it, right? It's a part of your manual now, right?
Right.
So one of the things you talk about in your book is, I think, 5 different categories of strategies that we should try and collect for our manual.
Yes.
So can you talk about that a little? I think the first one you had was strategies that encourage identity development. So will you please talk to us a little about this?
Yeah. And if we can go through each of them, that would be helpful too, because, it'll help me just kind of jog my memory. But I think it's really important to think about these ideas of, how is my child developing into themselves, right? I think a lot of times we will make funny comments. We'll say, oh, he's a spitting image of me, or, oh, he's a mini me. And he may look like you and she may do some of your things, but they are their own person, right? And so looking at strategies that will help you to encourage them to find out who they are, right? Help them to figure out if they are like their family, or maybe they're not, or if there are things they want to take from their family, but there are things that they might want to take from other pieces of their lives. It's really important that throughout our child's life, we give them space to find out who they are, not just when they're teenagers and they start demanding it. But even before then, when they're babies, when they're toddlers, really giving them little moments to figure out, oh, this is what they like and this is who they are. One of the things that often comes up with younger kids is food choice, right? And my kid's a picky eater, right? And being able to change that terminology and that framework, right? To my kid really likes this type of food and that's just who they are. Not, oh, they're so picky and they don't like anything and they never eat this, right? But really learning how, because they hear those terms, I'm a picky eater, I'm hard, I never eat anything. They hear all of that and they carry it with them. And so if you want them to have a healthy sense of their identity, really reframing the way that we are experiencing our child's behaviors when they are doing things that feel abnormal to us, right? Like that. So I think thinking about those type of strategies helps.
Yes. And there's a huge added benefit to this, right? Because if a child grows up with a strong sense of identity, then they're less susceptible to shame and guilt because they come from a place of, I know what I'm doing and I know what I'm doing is right for me. I don't care what anybody else says. So we are kind of shame-proofing them while at the same time we are shame-proofing our own parenting, right?
I agree. And oftentimes I tell my parents, as you do this and develop this manual, you might even start to use it for your own healing, right? Mm-hmm. Because there might have been spaces in your life where no one gave you space to develop your identity. And so as you're doing it for your kid, you realize, oh, I could be recreating myself as well at the same time. So it kind of works twofold, like you just said. Yes.
Awesome. So the second group of strategies that we parents should start collecting parenting tools for is the tools that help and support with the development of emotional intelligence.
Yes.
So why is this so important? And
I think it's so interesting because we oftentimes send our kids into the world. They're going to learn everything at school. The teacher's going to teach them that. And I wish more schools had emotional development as like a class. But
I know.
Right? I think it's really important for us to really acknowledge how influential our emotions are to our life, right? If we learn how to express ourselves in a healthy way, they can become ways that we can really excel in our lives, being able to tell people how we feel and what we think. If we don't have a healthy way, they can really cause barriers in our lives because we don't know how to express ourselves and we might make bad decisions. And so I teach my parents really early on to give your kids an emotional vocabulary. When they're having tantrums, teach them. You can say, I'm mad, I'm sad, I'm hungry, I'm this. Teach them the words that they can use. It doesn't mean they won't have tantrums, but at least they'll be able to use words where you can help them out of it. So if your kid says, I'm angry and falls on the floor, you understand anger versus they say, I'm sad and they fall on the floor. Those are two different things you can do differently with your child to help them manage it. And so I think any strategies in the parenting world that help you to understand emotions yourself and then also teach them to your child are going to be really useful in your unique parenting manual.
Right. I really like that because, again, this works both ways. One, we are building our own whole wide set of strategies so we can, without shame, guilt, use our intuition to pick the ones that work for any given situation, right? So that's one way this is helping. And in the second way, again, by empowering our kids with emotional intelligence, we are automatically shame-proofing them.
Yes.
We are helping them more resilient to shame. I really like that. So the next set of tools kind of ties in with this, and it's kind of an extension that is to help them encourage empathy and support social strategies. So this is another set of tools that we want to build in ourselves. Can you talk a little about that?
I think social skills and emotional development go hand in hand, definitely. And so when we're watching our child interact with others, whether it be other peers, other adults, really learning, okay, how does my child interact with them? Not judging them, but learning, right? Being curious. So if you have a very outgoing child, usually we tend to, agree with those children a little bit more because they're more outgoing, they're more talkative, they do more. For our kids who might be a little bit more shy, a little bit more introverted, we also have to help them develop social skills too. And they don't have to be extroverted social skills. Teaching our shy kids how to step in when they want to and step out. right? Teaching our extroverted kids how to step out when they need to, because sometimes they can get overwhelmed with all the emotions. And I think we have to really that goes back to us and our own understanding of what we value, right? We tend to value more extroverted people over introverted people, and really checking that when we have a child that might be more quiet, more shy, more into their own internal thoughts, right? Really making sure that, again, going back to the labels, not saying, oh, you're so shy, oh, it's, you're always so quiet, but saying, wow, you really know how to be on your own and read your own books, right? That's really good that you know how to take that quiet time for yourself, right? And really reframing the way that we talk to our child about who they are and their traits and their identity. And I think finding strategies that allow us to do that, it gives us more of a framework, right, to do it in a healthy way.
I love that. So the next set of strategies that we are going to collect are the ones that support brain development.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of that happens in school, right? So the kids are going to school, they're learning their academics, they're doing that. One of the things that I think is so important for parents to do, though, too, is to be a part of that, right? So when your kids come from school, and maybe not right after school because they've been in school for 8 hours, but at some point asking them, what did you learn today, right? How are you doing, right? When we see our kids struggling, to really understand how learning and the way a child learns impacts their self-esteem. And so if you have a kid who's more kinetic, which means they have to do to learn, but they're in a school that has them sit in a chair for 8 hours, right? What can I do to enhance my kids' learning, right? Instead of being mad at them because they're not learning, saying, maybe I need to find a program where they get to do more than sit, right? And really being mindful of that. I think also, one of the other books that I think talks about child development a lot is The Whole Brain Child by Dan Siegel and Tina Bryson, right? And really understanding brain development yourself. So my 3-year-old can't do certain things, not because they're defiant, but just because they're 3 and their brain is not fully developed at that moment yet, right? Same thing with our 15-year-old. Our 15-year-old, yes, they might look and sound like an adult, right? And they might even be towering over us, but to realize that brain development, they're still learning a lot, right? There's still a lot of connections and neurons that are being processed in that moment, right? And so I think having both the academic piece where we're learning how our child learns and how they're processing information, and then also having just kind of a generic chart on what is a kid doing cognitively and brain development wise will help parents to set healthy expectations for their child. So they're not expecting their 3-year-old to be able to do certain things that they just aren't capable of because of where they are in their development.
And this is super important, right? Especially because a lot of our own shame stories are rooted in unreasonable expectations by others who don't realize what stage of development our child is, right? So this category of tools is really important, not just in helping our kids, but in ourselves, like you said, to reinvent and refigure out what matters to us.
Yeah. And then to also have that script, because people do that. Oh, well, my 5-year-old can fly to the moon. And that's beautiful. But my 5-year-old is here and this is where they are developmentally, and being able to find that courage to say that, right? And that's something that I really like to empower my parents to do. Have that courage to say, this is my family, right? So your family might be flying to the moon, beautiful, but we are here. This is what we're doing. This is what we're capable of. And this is what we're okay with and comfortable with right now. And I think sometimes that helps to mitigate our shame stories too, because sometimes we don't speak up for ourselves and our families because we're so scared of what people might think. And to really challenge people to say, it's okay that my child is not here. It's okay that he's here, right? And we're going to move at his pace, right? And I think that that's something that's really empowering to do, especially when you have your own shame-proof, parenting manual. It's yours. You know what you're doing.
Right. I like that. So just to catch everybody up where we are. So we're building this manual that is completely, entirely unique to ourselves, because there are so many tools out there. There are so many strategies out there. And sometimes it's easy to feel, oh, I'm not doing this, this, and this, so I must be a bad parent. And we want to avoid that. And that's why we are building this manual from scratch and putting in the tools that work for us and our families. And Mercedes is explaining to us the different categories of tools that we should be collecting in this manual. And the last set of category that we'll be looking at is strategies that encourage healthy parent and child relationship. This is the closest one to my heart. So tell us about this.
Yeah, I think, again, we live in a very fast-paced world where we're just doing everything. You're taking kids here, going to this recital, going to this program, going to this event, going to this practice. And I think we really have to sometimes slow down and figure out, how do I reconnect to my child, right? We've been going. I see them because I'm taking them to places, but I'm not really connecting with them. I don't really know what's going on with them. I think a lot of times we realize this when our kids become teenagers and they start to shut down. But by then they've learned the culture of the family that no one's going to connect with me. No one's going to listen to me. So why speak up? Why share? And so I really try to teach my parents early on, have dates with your child, have time when you can just kind of be them, you and them. If you have multiple kids, have time for each of them. So each individual child gets space to have your attention and not have to compete with the other people in the house and things like that, because you don't really always understand. Just like you and I, we go through life all the time, right? Just kind of thriving and surviving. But when someone says, how are you really doing? It's like, oh, okay, I can finally say how I'm really doing. And our kids learn to do that too. They learn to just go, go, go. And then when someone says, how are you? When they feel that trust, they'll finally say, well, I'm not doing so great and I'm having a hard time. But we have to build that, and we have to be very intentional about building it. And then for this set of strategies too, it also lays the foundation for self-care that a lot of us never got when we were younger, right? We were always taught to go, 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 right? Our parents made us go to school, go to class, go to this, go to that. Make sure you have enough stuff on your college application. Go, 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 Right. And so we never learned self-care. And I think when we spend that time with our children, develop that relationship, we're laying that foundation for them to not go into their adult life without that space of self-care, knowing how to do it.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. So this is the whole manual that we're building, and this manual goes hand in hand with the shame-proof parenting framework, right?
Right.
So talk to us a little about the framework.
Yeah. And so I think it's really good that we went over the strategies, because the shame-proof parenting framework is not an ABCD, do this and your family will be perfect, right? It's really about taking a step back and saying, how is the world affecting us? How is what people think of us affecting the way we're connecting to each other? And when I work with parents, I see that so much, that they come to me because the school has said something, because somebody outside has said something, and they think, oh, we need help. But when I look at a lot of families, they're not as broken and as bad as they have been told, right? As the school has told them, or as their family has told them. But we sometimes take in all of that stuff thinking, oh my God, our family is so bad. Why can't I be more like this person's family? Or why can't my kids be good like them over there next door? And so the shame-proof parenting framework says, how do we learn as a family to come together, talk to each other, connect with each other, and build resilience around what other people might say about us, right? How do we do that?
I really like that. Can we unpack that a little? So I heard you talk about resilience, about getting to know each other, awareness. So can you talk about the different components that we need to make sure is built into our family, the different components of this framework?
Yeah. So I think one of the things that's really important about getting to know each other is actually taking the time to do that, right? I always tell parents, if they can do one family meeting a week, that allows everybody to come together, talk about their week, talk about what's going on, problem solve different things. And that actually over time builds resilience, because everyone in the family knows that I don't have to act up, I don't have to act out, because I'm going to have a space to get my needs met, to get my voice heard, right? When we go, and we don't have any space, people begin to act out. People begin to have a hard time because no one's taking time to say, how are you? What's going on, right? And so family meetings allow busy families to sit down and say, what's going on with everybody? Right? And everything doesn't get resolved in the family meeting, but it lays the foundation that there's a safe space in our family that at least once a week, everybody will get a chance to talk and share. Sometimes we even learn that other people have skills that we didn't know about, because someone will say, I have a problem, and someone else will say, well, this is a good way to solve it. And you realize, wow, they've got some skills that we didn't know about. Right? No. Right? And that is real resilience, because then it changes the way we see each other in the family. It changes the way that we understand each other. I think resilience in a family is the ability to bounce back together, right? and to expand our problem solving. Oftentimes when I work with families, it's one kid, right? The one kid that's bad. And I say, we're all a family. So if one kid is bad, everybody's having to deal with that, right? So how do we build problem solving together? How do we not say, well, it's just mom yells too much, we're all okay. Well, if mom is yelling, then why is she yelling? Let's look at the whole family and see, what's going on there. And that helps our families to not point out who's to blame, but it says, okay, we're all a family. So if one person is having a hard time, we all are. And how are we going to work together to problem solve that so we can build resilience and we can learn together?
Right. So this kind of touches the different components of the framework, right? That's it helps us be empathic towards each other. So that's empathy. There's awareness of what's happening in each other's life. There's a way to know what everyone needs. So because there is a common space to bring that up, it builds confidence in ourselves and in the whole family as a unit. We build resilience. We offer support. So through all this, we need to always stay in touch with the fact that we are human beings and by definition imperfect, and we are raising human beings who are, again, by definition imperfect, and they're not even fully grown and developed yet, right? So mistakes will be made and conflicts will be had. So you talk about the rupture and repair cycle when we talk about this. So can you talk to us a little about the rupture and repair cycle?
Yeah, that concept came from actually parenting from the inside out with Dr. Dan Siegel and Mary Hartzell. And when I apply it to the shame-proof parenting framework, it really looks like how do we first recognize that there's been a rupture? Right? So maybe there was some yelling, there was some words that were said, maybe there were some behaviors that's been done that we don't all agree with. And then how do we take the time to say we're all imperfect, like you just said? So when someone has a moment where they do the wrong thing, how do we repair it? Right? And that repair sometimes can be quick, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. And sometimes that repair might take time because we're asking someone to change, right? So maybe they say sorry, but they might do it again because they're changing, right? And they're learning how to do better. And so I think really understanding that the rupture and repair cycle is part of having a human relationship. It happens between parent and child, between siblings, between partners, learning how to say, I am sorry, I am going to do better. And then the other person actually being honest about what they need for that person to do better, right? This is something I teach a lot with sibling relationships where parents say, oh, you guys are just brother and sister, figure it out. Well, yes, but we have to teach them. How do they figure it out? How do they ask for what they need from their sibling? And then how does this other sibling learn how to accommodate that? And how do they negotiate that, right? Because we're teaching them these skills of human relationship. And so I think the repair and rupture cycle under the shame-proof parenting framework really looks like that resilient stuff we just talked about, really looks like that awareness where the more I get to know you, the more able I am to accept that you're trying to do better.
Awesome. So we are running out of time for this segment. Actually, I think we've gone over time for this segment. So I'm going to wrap it up out here. So everybody at home, what we looked at here is the manual that you'll build for yourself to shame-proof your parenting, so you're not going and feeling embarrassed, guilty, ashamed for not using a certain thing. So once you have your own manual, that gives you the strength to shame-proof your parenting. And we looked at the framework in which to use this manual, right? So this is part of our masterclass on removing shame from parenting.